Been doing that for about 7 years now. Honestly, kind of got into it by accident. Realized that using a single OTA to get rentals wasn't going to work in the long term and started looking for solutions.
When I started my short-term rental management company, Airbnb didn't exist.
Technology lets us create time for those important conversations and allow, some of that core stuff to just kind of happen.
Welcome back, my beautiful people. In this video, we're going to be talking about the importance of using technology in your short-term rental business. And today, I have a very special guest. He's a product lead. I'll let him tell you what he actually does, but he does two things. And one of the reasons why I invited him is because of this. Number one, he is an operator. Those that follow my channel know that I am a big fan and I only take advice from true operators, meaning people that are in the business. There's a lot of people on social media, on YouTube, that talk about the short-term rental business, but they're not really true operators because they're not really in the business, not currently managing short-term rentals. And this business has changed dramatically in the last 6 to 7 years, which is why when I talk to people, I want current operators, not someone that had success in the beginning and then started doing ebooks and teaching short-term rentals, right? I don't think they're true operators, and their information is not current. Secondly, is the reason why I'm bringing this person on and introducing you to him is because of his knowledge in terms of technology. He works for a company called ChargeAutomation. He also uses PMS systems that are very good. But without further ado, let me introduce you to Ian Carter. Carter, can you tell our subscribers, what you do? Tell us about your management company.
Sure, Fernando. First, thanks for having me. It's always great to have an opportunity to share a bit of knowledge with existing operators and people thinking about getting into the industry. So yeah, the company that I founded, Trillium Property Management, we're a full service property management company. We have about 53 client properties right now in the southern Georgian Bay area of Ontario, Canada. So sort of Collingwood, Blue Mountain, Wasaga Beach area. Been doing that for about 7 years now. Honestly, kind of got into it by accident. Technology, the sort of central focus of our conversation today is kind of what got me into it, and leveraging technology and having people come to me saying, "Hey, you seem to have a good handle on technology that makes this work. Can you help me?" Is sort of how Trillium got its start. On the sort of tech stack software side. Yeah, I work for ChargeAutomation. I am a client success and senior technology expert with ChargeAutomation. So my primary goal is helping users of ChargeAutomation make the most out of the software, not just for its revenue generating capabilities, but because it serves to make your day-to-day operations easier, streamline a bunch of really core functions that need to happen in a way that, hopefully for operators makes it easier for them on a day-to-day basis to do all of the things that they need to do to make their business run. So.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, in this channel, so we focus a lot on the operations side of the house, and like you mentioned, I firmly believe, especially if you want to grow and expand your business, you can't do it today at the rate you could if without technology. So you briefly talked about or mentioned that you got into the business through technology. Can you expand on that? Meaning, did you started working with Charge Automation first and then started the company, or did you have your management company and then started working with Charge Automation?
So yeah, the management company started with, I guess, on the technology side first. My wife and I had bought a couple of rental properties ourselves, realized that using a single OTA to get rentals wasn't going to work in the long term, and started looking for solutions. So made the first logical step, in looking for PMS to use. We have for a long time been using booking automation, but looked at several products out there. There's lots of great PMSs out there for sure that people can use. But that was our first step into technology. Followed fairly shortly after that by bringing ChargeAutomation, sort of into our tech stack. That was sort of mid 2019, in the very early days of ChargeAutomation. We added them, to our tech stack, and that combination of a robust PMS along with ChargeAutomation, I think is what really helped catapult us in terms of being able to get new clients, because we were able to say to folks, we have a piece of software that can get your property connected to multiple OTAs so that you're not reliant on a single one and the ebbs and flows that may come along with that specific OTA, as well as streamline, the things that we all need to do every day, right? We probably need to get some form of ID from someone. There's probably a rental agreement. And then, of course, along the way, there's probably payment or a damage deposit, right, that we need to collect from guests. And having that, combination as, part of what is now a bit of a larger tech stack, made it possible for us to begin to, expand, take on more properties, and grow to the point that we're at now.
Awesome. I mean, you gave a lot of great nuggets right there, but let me backtrack a little bit because I forgot to ask. When did you start your management company?
Yeah, we would have started sort of mid 2018. I mean, in its current form, its current corporation, we were incorporated mid 2019, but we sort of had our first client, mid 2018, through some, sort of word of mouth advertising through some friends who sort of said like, hey, you've got this, sort of, seem to have figured it out, right, in terms of, getting out on multiple platforms. It was some slow growth at the beginning. Certainly in more recent years, we've seen, some sort of better growth in terms of the size of our company. But, early on, it was, a property here, a property there kind of thing. And as we refined our process, we got some more word of mouth, advertising kind of thing, and, started to see, a bit of a, sort of better acceleration in terms of the growth of our company.
Awesome. Here's, I mean, that's the reason I asked that question, because that's key, right? You talked about the importance of using technology to grow your business, but I've been in business much longer, and most of this stuff didn't exist, right? So you came in in my opinion, probably the best time to start a management company, especially in the short-term rental side, because it's still in its infancy, right? In 2017, 18, we're still fairly new, but not new to the point that no one knew about it. So, for example, when I started my short-term rental management company, Airbnb didn't exist. So it really wasn't known. And back then, we really didn't call it, short-term rentals. We really called it vacation rentals, right? And it was really more my clientele was a lot more on during the winter months with snowbirds from Canada,
Yeah.
right? So that was my market. But as time went on, like you, I realized, especially right at 2017 and 18, that in order for me to grow and be able to gain some freedom, I needed technology. And you were lucky that you were able to figure that out much quicker than I did, right? So that's pretty cool. Now, a couple of things that you talked about that I want the audience to really resonate with is the following. You mentioned about growth, or you talked about growth. You talk about streamlining processes, right? And that's some of the stuff that technology actually does. But what was the biggest lesson that you learned prior to, when you were implementing this technology, like your PMS system, which I tell people all the time, if you, even if you're operating only one property, get a PMS system. It's going to save you so much time and effort. But what were the biggest lessons that you learned when you started implementing technology?
Probably the biggest lesson is, you know, don't just do everything automated, right? Think about the process that you're going to build. And I mean, over the years that we've been doing it, the messages that we send, when we send them, the content that are in them has gone through so many iterations, I can't even keep track of it anymore. But thinking about the process in advance, knowing or trying to identify where in the process technology and automation can be a benefit to you, with, I would say, the ultimate goal of being freeing up time so that the times where interacting, with your client, with their guests, you create the time to do that. It shouldn't be about moving away from interacting with people. It should be about shifting, the meat and potatoes stuff. Things like guests want a confirmation. They want to get some message that says, yes, we've heard from you. We know that your booking's there. This is when it's happening. Most people nowadays, I would say, understand and expect that that's going to be an automated message of some nature. But shifting that kind of stuff to automation so that when the phone rings, and the example I use time and time again is somebody calls up and they say, it's my 25th wedding anniversary. My spouse really loves Italian food. Is there a restaurant in the area that you would recommend? Automation and technology is there to free up time to have that conversation so that you can say, hey, this is a restaurant I've gone to and I love it. And they've got a great wine list and the gnocchi is fantastic, or, whatever it is. Right. And I think that's, technology lets us create time for those important conversations and allow, sort of, some of that core stuff to just kind of happen. So that, yeah, that would be the lesson, right? Think about the process. Don't just throw everything into automation, because then you lose the personalization that I think still needs to be there.
That's awesome. And again, that's another big gold nugget that you're giving the viewers. Because I talk about this all the time. We are in the hospitality industry, right? And we I personally, and it seems like you do the same, is we're using technology to provide a better guest experience. And the way we provide that better guest experience is through unreasonable hospitality. So, for example, in the scenario you just gave, if you're not bogged down with the day-to-day operations of a normal business, it gives you the opportunity that when you hear that, not only can you provide that guest with the information they want, but you can go beyond that. Like, for example, we've oftentimes, when we hear something like that, we'll go ahead and not only make the recommendation, but ask if they want us to make the reservation. Then we'll make the reservation for them, let the restaurant know, hey, these are special guests coming, so they can give them like a special gift, right? People, I can't express how big that is, especially for the people receiving that, right? And it costs you nothing but a phone call, right? So very, very good. I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of people miss that. And it's, you know when you're operating a small business, it's a little easier to do. But when you have a big business, it can be easy, because now you have the staffing, you have the money, and hopefully you have the processes and procedures in place to do it. But when you're in the middle, when you have anywhere between 10 and like 30 properties, a lot of people get stuck because they don't, they're afraid to hire,
Yeah.
right? Spend money to hire staffing, and they're afraid to spend money on extra software and technology that they need. And it's difficult to get over that hump. people, you can't be afraid. This, and we're going to talk about how to generate more money when you add this technology in a second. But I want to ask you one more question related to uh, um, your current business. What were some of the most significant challenges that you faced uh, growing your business from zero to you said over 50 properties under management?
Significant. Well, I mean, I'd say figuring out what we wanted our business to look like. And I know that, I mean, it sounds like a bit of a vague, but what kind of impression do we want to leave not only with our clients, right? So the property owners that come to us saying, hey, can you give me a hand getting my place rented out? But what kind of impression do we want to leave with our guests? And yeah, we're in the hospitality industry. We know that the reality is, unfortunately, sometimes in this business, not everyone's going to be happy. So making sure that we had a clear sense of what we thought was right and wrong and what the right approaches to things were. How do we react if there's, a challenge with a client? How do we react if there's a challenge with a guest so that we leave everyone feeling as though they were treated fairly? And it's something that we noticed as we were getting into it, that that we sort of wondered if some of the people in in the area surrounding us were looking at it that way, or if they were really just focused on making a ton of money. And I learned years ago from a guy who was actually replacing windows for me, right? He said, you don't become a millionaire one job at a time, you become a millionaire one relationship at a time. So we focused on relationships, good relationships with our
I love,
clients and good relationships with guests. And that doesn't always mean that we're giving them the answer that they want, but it means that we're treating them with decency, we're treating them with dignity and fairness and respect, even if we're saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. And that, I would say, was the biggest lesson, making sure that we knew who we wanted to be as an organization, and making sure that we sort of carried that philosophy forward in the way that we dealt with people.
awesome, awesome. I love that. I love that because I preach that all the time. I tell a lot of people that I consult is you need to understand who your avatar is, right? Who's your customer? And like you said, you're not going to please everyone. So stop trying to please everyone. Just be true to yourself, be true to what your mission is within your company, and you'll be fine. You'll be successful. And just like you said, it's one relationship at a time, because a relationship it only takes one. I'll bring this up because it's related to this. Um, I got very lucky when I first got into this business, because I met one investor, and that one investor really catapulted my business, because not only was he buying properties, converting them to short-term rentals, and we were managing them, but because we're in sales, we were earning the money through the transaction. But more importantly, I personally was learning. And today I own over 46 properties as a result of that one relationship. And I can't express that enough. It only takes one to really catapult your business to the next
Yeah.
level. But thank you for sharing that. Now let's shift gears a little bit, and let's now talk a little bit more in terms of technology, right? Um, Explain or tell my audience specifically about ChargeAutomation. We'll talk about PMS systems and booking automation and other PMS systems in a second. But I want to really dive deep into ChargeAutomation. Now, full disclaimer, I use ChargeAutomation myself. And Ian, being a leader in that specific platform, please explain to us, A, what it is, and what role does it play into the success of your short-term rental
Yeah.
business?
So I use Charge Automation. Like I said at the outset, I was an early adopter of, Charge Automation, right, and have joined the company now. So what Charge Automation does, and the gap that it fills, is that it it brings together in a way that doesn't exist anywhere else in the market that we know of, both the guest experience side. So, guidebooks, the sharing of information, whether it be, sort of, core critical information like door codes and addresses, or, secondary information like restaurant recommendations and local attractions. But it brings that piece together, which exists in several other places in the market, and combines it with payment processing, and sort of guest verification, guest information collection, so that in a single platform you can gather any information that you need to about your guest. So some jurisdictions that we work with, they're required to get a passport for anyone who's coming from outside the country, right? New Zealand as an example, right? Any operators down there, they have to get a passport. That's a feature that exists in ChargeAutomation. You can get a passport or other forms of ID. Most operators are going to have a rental agreement of some nature that's going to outline, what the expectations are, if pets are allowed, where you need to smoke, when you're allowed to use the pool, those sorts of things. So ChargeAutomation has a rental agreement component in there where not only can you present that rental agreement to people, but from an operator perspective, you can have a record that they've viewed that rental agreement and get a signature on it as well to know that they've looked it over and they've agreed to the terms, that are in there. And then payment collection. And, certainly there are, platforms like Airbnb where they handle that for you. But there are lots of platforms where as you grow in size, they shift the obligation to collect payment over to you as the operator. And that direct payment collection function exists for, smaller operators. And when you get to like your size, Fernando, or even my size, they sort of say, hey, you're big enough now that you should take care of this on your own. And ChargeAutomation sort of, fills that role as well and builds into it the ability that, if a credit card payment doesn't go through, instead of you having to react to it, ChargeAutomation will react to it on your behalf. And we give you the ability, almost regardless of where you are in the world, to be able to connect to a local payment processor, because we have a huge number of integrations with payment processors all over the world. So we're kind of becoming the go-to, hey, if you're having a hard time connecting to a payment processor, let's connect you with the folks at ChargeAutomation, because they probably know somebody, they know which payment processor is going to work, in your country, kind of thing. So you can come to us. We can make that connection to, a payment processor in your local jurisdiction, and then facilitate, the passing of all of that transaction related information in a secure way. So that you don't have to worry about making sure that you store credit card information correctly, making sure that, payment gets collected, because we automate all that for you, as well as making sure that you can, share information with your guests so that when they do arrive, after you get all the paperwork out of the way, you can give them that good guest experience and say, hey, these are really fun things to do in the area, and this is a great place to eat. And here's your door code in a nice, easy way that the smartphone that almost everyone has in their hand, they can just pick up and go, hey, I can look up a restaurant recommendation here on my phone, as well as find my door code and the Wi-Fi information all in one place.
Awesome. So let's just recap on some of the overview of ChargeAutomation, right? It's the ability to do direct charges, right? To receive direct payments. The guidebook, I think the guidebook's phenomenal. Here's one thing that I'll add about the guidebook, especially as I mentioned, we use ChargeAutomation. We've been using it for a while. And in terms of the guidebook, prior to using ChargeAutomation, we were using another company, but that other company, in order to access the guidebook, the guest needed to download an app. And one of the things that we discovered during that time is that is something that a lot of people are hesitant to do, and it eliminates those that don't have smartphones or older individuals that have a hard time with technology, right? So Um, with Charge Automation, it's not you don't have to download an app. It's
Yep.
just a link. And we found out that the conversion rate, or meaning the people that actually use it, was much greater than the old company. So that's a big plus, a big benefit that we discovered. Um, and then the other thing that you talked about was in terms of chargebacks, right? Chargebacks are an issue for those of you that are receiving direct payments. And if you are receiving direct payments, you know that it is an issue. With charge automation and receiving the documents and having a guest having to go through a certain process gives you the ability to fight chargebacks. And for us, we saw a huge decline in losses as it relates to chargebacks. Um, Anything I missed, Ian, about that? About the benefits?
No, I think that that pretty much covers it. I mean, yeah, the chargeback piece, which I didn't mention, is certainly something that we see a lot of people coming to us for, because at the payment processor or payment gateway level, it can be, sort of very technologically challenging. Sometimes activating that, chargeback protection feature or some of those added security features requires, writing very specific rules in a very specific format. With charge automation, where those features are supported, in most cases it's quite literally just ticking a box. We've written the code for you on the back end. You just say, yes, I want to activate that additional protection. We add that information to the information we send to your payment processor, and you don't have to worry about worrying, is it a squiggly bracket or a square bracket or two colons or any of that crazy stuff. We've got developers on the back end who make sure that the code is correct, and you just tick the box to say yes.
Awesome. Um, I want to touch on two things, and one is going to be the upsell feature of it. But before we get there, can you tell my audience who's the ideal user for charge automation? Like, is there a specific type of short-term rental operator or property manager that can benefit from charge
I
automation?
think, I mean, as cliche as it might sound, I think everyone can benefit from charge automation. And I mean that genuinely. I'm not a sales guy. I do client success, right? I'm not here to try to sell you on the product. When you decide to use it, I'm the guy who's here to help you make sure you get the most out of it. And I do think that everyone can benefit from it. I mean, even on the guidebook feature, right? We all want to share information with our guests to enhance their stay, right? And we can't predict exactly what they're going to want to know. Through the guidebooks, you can put together a bunch of information and let people passively consume the information that they want. Maybe they don't care about restaurants because they're going to eat in because there's a great kitchen in your short-term rental. So you don't want to call them up and say, hey, let me tell you about all the restaurants. And they go, I don't really care. But maybe they're really looking for attractions in the area. You can put together a guidebook on all those attractions and restaurants and hiking trails and let people just passively consume that kind of stuff. Whether you're a small operator or a large operator, the ability to take direct reservations and process that payment. The good thing is, with the way our fee structure works, if you're not processing payments, there isn't a cost associated with it. So even as a small operator, you're not committing yourself to a recurring monthly cost. The cost only comes when a transaction actually happens. And the guidebook feature remains there and available for you to use, even on the reservations like your Airbnbs where you're not collecting payment. Even on those reservations, those guests are still going to have access, to the guidebook feature. And if you have a rental agreement, right, you just build it into the system, you get a signature, it's done. So I think anyone can benefit really at the end of the day. Right. And then there's, like you alluded to, there are additional revenue generating features that are built into the software, like upsells, that I hear from a lot of people. Well, we just did that for free. And, not saying that you should charge for everything, but there are add-on things that you can, add through the upsell component, that may generate additional revenue for you. And then through Charge Automation, we can streamline that process for you. So it's presented to your guests. They can decide whether they want it or not, and then, go through the whole payment flow and everything's taken care of for you. So I think everyone can, benefit in some way for sure.
Awesome, yeah. And you touched on what I wanted to talk about next was the upsell features within Charge Automation. And I can tell you, and for those that follow my weekend review videos, I always talk about additional revenue sources. When those additional revenue sources they come in through Charge Automation in the form of our upsells. And like Ian said, you don't have to charge for everything. Like, for example, we provide cribs, pack and plays, high chairs for children. Now, we don't keep that in each and every, or we don't keep it out in every property. So the way we work that is, if it's needed, a guest could just click on it. There's no charge, although it's in the upsell section, but it sends a request to us that they're going to want that. So then we can then forward that to our staff, and then they can take those items out and set them up as needed. So it's not, you don't necessarily need to use that particular feature within Charge Automation to actually make money. You can use it to help you operate your business more efficiently, especially if you don't want to, let's say, for example, like us, where we manage a lot of properties. I'm not buying a high chair and a pack and play and a crib for every property. So in order to save a little bit of money, we bought an extended amount. I think we in inventory we have 20 of each, and then once it's requested, then we can send our staff to drop that off, and we don't have to spend that extra money every time we get a new property to buy those extra items that are not always going to be used. Okay. Anything else you want to add in terms of upsells, Ian?
Yeah, I think our upsell module, like you just said, right, can be used simply for managing processes, right? Even if it's something that you're not specifically charging for, right, it can be used to, streamline a process so that there's a way for people in a concrete way to make that request that's then trackable and manageable. But we've seen people, generate fairly substantial amounts of money in fairly short time periods, because through the upsell module, it's going to send the email to you. It's then going to, send emails potentially to, third-party providers. If it's a fruit basket and you've got, a local company that's putting those fruit baskets together for you, obviously there's a cost for that. Right? But you can send messages off to those folks and streamline that process to make it possible to do it. Because of course, as you're growing, like you said, when you're in that middle space, sort of 10 to 30 properties where you're maybe not quite big enough to start bringing staff on board, but adding additional processes might seem like it's just too much. Using Charge Automation and other pieces of technology to streamline that may mean that you can add on that fruit basket or start offering, you get a couple of pack and plays and, a couple of high chairs, and have a process to be able to manage people requesting that. So you don't have to put one in every property. And then it makes it manageable. You enhance your guest experience by them being able to ask for that pack and play or get that cold fruit basket when they show up. And then they tell their friends, hey, I stayed with so-and-so, and it was really easy when I needed a high chair. I just clicked on a box, and it didn't cost me anything, and it was there when I showed up. And that's the kind of stuff that's going to help you, grow from 10 properties to 30 to 50 to however big you want to go, right? By making the process easy for your guest and easy for you, and nice and manageable.
Awesome. Yeah, that's gold, people. It's extremely important, and it's like I said, it's going to give you that better guest experience, which in turn is going to give you better reviews, which in turn is going to make you more money, right? The last question with Charge Automation that I have for you, Ian, is the following: what challenges that you see with your clients that are signing up to get Charge Automation? What are the challenges that they're having with charge automation, and how do you tackle that?
What challenges are they having with? Huh. I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that question. Let me think about that. Um,
Well, let me give you some perspective here. So, like for example, when I first started with charge automation, um, the one of the challenges that I have, and this is why I guess your position came about, is because I really didn't understand how to optimize the use of charge automation, right? I knew certain things about the platform through my onboarding process, but as new features came about and as new ways to use the platform, uh, me not being, you know, being as busy as I am, I'm not in the day to day operation. And half the time, my staff is not, they're doing their thing. But I discovered that I was missing out on some ways to really optimize the usage, right? Specifically when it came to upsells, um, because we had a couple of things on there, but I really didn't understand the full scope of the capability of charge automation. So, am I unique in that sense, or some of the people that you talk to help maximize the platform? What are the challenges that they're bringing onto you when you start taking on a client?
yeah, I certainly see some of that. I know that like our developers and engineers are, always working hard behind the scenes. I mean, they're the ones, and I'm going to give them a shout out. I mean, they are in a lot of ways kind of the unsung, heroes of charge automation. I get to sit here, today talking to you and talking to your audience, about a software platform that they're the ones maintaining every day. They're really the unsung heroes in the whole process. Bringing out those new features like reminders that we've added into various messages so that you can customize when you send a reminder out to someone about an upsell or the need for payment information and that kind of stuff. So certainly, yeah, there are lots of times where I'm meeting with clients and I'm letting them know about the addition of features like that, the ability to customize when messages go out, and that sort of stuff. As I've sort of sat here thinking about it, I think probably one of the challenges, and I mean it's sort of more a challenge we have, is that clients will come to us wanting charge automation to do something that we haven't made it do yet. So I mean it's sort of a challenge in both directions. They love the product, which we're always happy to hear, and they want it to do more, which we're happy to hear. But sometimes my engineers look at me and they go, Ian, like, man, like, how quickly do you expect this? There's only so quickly we can write code. So I think I don't want to say it's unrealistic expectations, but it's wants and desires that are sort of beyond where we're at in terms of the development of charge automation, because it still is a relatively young platform, and I've seen it come a long way since 2019 when I started using it. Right? I mean, over the last 6 months, the number of enhancements and changes that we made in the platform have been huge, and ones that seem small, right, in terms of like scheduling payments, a request that we were getting from lots of people who are doing midterm rentals, and the ability to break up a payment as opposed to previously where it was just two payments, right? You could take 25% up front and the remainder 3 days before check-in, giving the ability to schedule 3 and 4 and 5 payments over an extended time period for all of our midterm operators who are maybe doing a 6-month rental, kind of thing. But yeah, I would say yeah, that's, I mean, sort of, yeah, probably the challenge is, people, they want more than we can offer at the moment, because I mean most big feature upgrades like that payment change, I mean that's anywhere from 3 to 6 months in the in the making, right? Because you have to, our engineers have to write the code, they have to test the code in multiple ways to make sure it works, and then get to the point where they're actually deploying it. That payment module upgrade, I mean, that required a couple hours of downtime in the middle of the night when you're making large scale changes like that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a challenge in both directions, I guess, wanting to meet people's expectations in terms of what the software does, while at the same time having people say, "Hey, I want to do this," and it's like, not quite yet, but we're getting there. We're working on it. So
Awesome. Okay, we only have like 5 minutes left, and I got two topics I want to cover, and one is going to be market trends. So, what are you currently seeing in the short-term rental market? Or what trends are you currently seeing in the short-term rental market that weren't there back when you started early on?
right now, as we sit here today, the biggest trend that I'm seeing is a shortening of booking lead times. People are booking much closer, and it's almost very COVID like. And we saw it at the height of COVID, right? When people weren't sure, am I going to get sick? Am I going to be able to travel? Is there going to be a new rule that's going to restrict what I can do? And people were booking very close to their arrival time. I'm seeing that happen again across my entire market, and talking to other folks, they're seeing the same thing, that booking lead times are shrinking, right? And we'll see, for any given day's checkouts, we can see 30% of those come in within 48 hours of their arrival time, kind of thing. So that's the big trend that we're seeing right now, is people booking just really close to when they're showing up, kind of like we saw, at the height of COVID.
Yeah, that's big because we're seeing the same. Everyone that I work with in South America and also in Europe, they're seeing their booking lead time is really really short. Like for us, I believe it's about 7 days is our book lead time, between 7 and 14 days. Where in the past it was months, right? Um, and why that's important is because with the shortening of the book lead time, it makes it harder for you as an operator to plan ahead, right? But it's also important that you express that and educate your owners on that, because they're going to start to panic when they're going into a month and the month is
Yeah.
half empty, right? So that's very important, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's a big one. That's a very big one. Well, the last question I have for you is, what advice would you give someone entering the business today? Like, what's someone brand new, or has only been in the business for several months? What advice would you give them?
I I would pass on two things. When you're building your tech stack, so your PMS, if you're going to introduce something like ChargeAutomation, and those sorts of things, don't go and get the cheapest one, right? The cheapest one may seem like the great way to save money, but it may cost you time at the end of the day, which is probably going to be more expensive, and it may create a bad guest experience. So do some good research, find technology that's going to work well for you, right? I have a tech stack that works very well for me. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the perfect tech stack for everyone, but it works great for me. And there was a lot of trial and error and a lot of pain along the way, right? PMSs that didn't send messages when they said they would, and stuff like that. So investing money in good technology pays dividends. And the other piece of advice I would give, and it's the same sort of investing money in the right place, the things that touch guests are worth spending money on: sheets, towels,
Exactly.
and toilet paper, right? Don't buy cheap towels. If it feels like sandpaper, they're going to remember that, and not in a good way. If your sheets are about as thick as a whisper, they're going to remember that, and not in a good way. And if your toilet paper is the uncomfortable kind, they're going to remember that. No one's going to remember, you know, exactly what the fork looked like. If it looks like a fork with four little pokey ends on it that you can poke into a vegetable or a piece of meat, and it works like a fork, they'll remember that. It worked. If a knife cuts and a spoon lifts liquid, it worked, right? But towels, sheets, toilet paper, the stuff that's going to come in contact with your guest, spend a little bit of money, right? You don't have to break the bank on it, but it's worth investing in those areas because I think those are the kinds of things that, you know, people will remember. Think about the last hotel you went to that had really bad, really scratchy towels. You can probably remember which one it was. You probably have a harder time remembering the one with the really nice towels, but that's because you don't have a bad memory about it, which is a good thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I just did a series on starting, I did a 7-part series on starting a short term rental management company from scratch. And hit every topic you just mentioned, I talked about because that's hugely important. Um, that's going to be all for us or for me today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Definitely share this and save it because there's a lot of valuable information that has been shared by Ian here. I am going to be putting all of Ian's information down in the description notes. So if you want to get a hold of him, you'll be able to do that. And the last thing I touched on is what he mentioned about the tech stack and not to go cheap on it. It's one of the things that I mentioned in my 7-part series. But more importantly, whatever tool you decide to get, and again, after you've done your research, whatever technology tool you decide to get, spend a lot of time learning it and
Mm-hmm.
mastering it. Take one tech, for example, your PMS system. Don't move on to something else until you really
Yeah.
master that. And then as you add on, make sure you master that before you get on, take something else on. Do you have any final thoughts, Dorian?
No, yeah, I would, yeah, totally agree. Yeah, master each piece before you add. Make sure yeah, you know how it works, and you know, there's going to be ups and downs. This is a business that ebbs and flows, and we've certainly seen it over the last few years, right? Don't get worried because the next 6 weeks don't look great. Number one, that might change in an absolute heartbeat. We saw it during COVID, right? We're locked down, nobody can travel, and the next thing you know, we're at 100% occupancy. Things are going to change. This is a business with ups and downs, and if you ride it out in the long term, it can be a really rewarding business where you make a lot of great relationships with a lot of really cool people.
Awesome. All right, guys. Love you guys. And I will see you on the next one.